Madam Supervisor, we've got the recording going if you'd like to restart the meeting.
Okay, I would like to call to order this special meeting of the Saugatuck Township Board and Planning Commission for Tuesday, January 19, 2021 at 5 p.m. I'll go ahead and call the roll, and just a reminder, you do have to state your location. And they are in alphabetical order, so nobody should take offense if they're not at the beginning. Aldrich.
Yes. Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
Bigford.
Here, Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
DeFranco.
Here, Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
Helmrich.
Here, Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
Eiley.
Here, Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
Israels.
Here, Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
Marcy.
Here, Saugatuck Township, Allegan County.
Osmond. Here, Saugatuck Township, Allegan County. Rowe.
Here, Sedona, Arizona.
Shipley. I'll come back. Welk.
Denise is joining right now.
Okay, Welk. Welk. Anybody see Welk?
No, I haven't seen him.
Okay, and we'll go back to Denise.
Hi, I just got on. Thank you for your
Okay.
patience,
No
everyone.
problem. Just please state your location when I call your name. Shipley?
I hear my location. I'm at home.
Saugatuck Township?
I'm sorry. I'm really just joining Saugatuck Township. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and does anybody see Mr. Welk yet?
I'm here,
Okay, and your location?
Fort Myers, Florida.
Okay, very good. Having taken the roll, we'll let Mr. Graham do a little bit of instructions for Zoom.
I appreciate it, Cindy, and thank you again to everyone. And I apologize about our previous interruption. That is exactly the reason why we at these meetings go over instructions like this. As a friendly reminder, please say your name before speaking. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. *6 is the instructions to mute and to unmute when you're participating via traditional telephone. Please don't click any unknown links that are shared, that may be shared via the chat feature on Zoom. The township does not plan to share any information that way. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on YouTube early tomorrow. If anyone is disruptive to the point that you're preventing the Township Board or Planning Commission from conducting business, you'll get one warning before being removed for the meeting. And I think it's probably prudent to add that if that's not able to be done, the host, which is me, will end the meeting. And I will just ask that everyone then give it about a minute or two and we'll rejoin and pick right back up from there. Please be respectful of those speaking and do not interrupt. And lastly, please continue to be patient with us as much as possible. I know all of us are still doing the best we can via this relatively new platform. And we're all going to be as deliberate as possible to get through the business on the agenda today. So unless there are any questions by anyone on the Township Board or Planning Commission, Madam Supervisor, I'm happy to hand it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open the public comment section of the meeting and request that if someone wants to speak, they either raise their hand or unmute themselves to get our attention and limit the time to 3 minutes. So having said that, is there anyone that would like to address the board or planning commission?
Madam Supervisor, I see Lori Goshorn.
Lori, you have the floor.
Good evening. I'm Lori Goshorn. I'm a full-time resident of Saugatuck Township, and I also sit on the Parks Commission. And I really appreciate you guys taking this time to meet and discuss the Tri-Community Master Plan. I've spoken with a number of township residents about the master plan, our township parks, and various other issues facing our township. And what I hear is basically that the master plan should be considered whenever the Planning Commission is reviewing a project. The red line winding its way through the master plan is protection of our riverfront, lakefront, dunes, beaches, wetlands, historic sites, and all the natural areas. With these protections in mind, our community has invested in these areas like Talmadge Woods, the Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area, the State Park, and the Patty Burkholz Natural Area. In addition, with the recent determination by the keeper of the National Register of Historic Places, the Kalamazoo River mouth meets the criteria as a tribal cultural landscape. And the township really needs to heed the comments of the people who have spoken up in support and assemble a historic district committee to review the river mouth and other areas for possible historic district status. And that's really all I wanted to say tonight. And again, I look forward to the meeting.
Thank you, Lori. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
I see Richard Kirk.
Richard, you have the floor. You're muted, Mr. Kurt.
There we are. I believe I'm unmuted now. Hi, I'm Rick Kirk. I do want to say up front, I'm not a resident of Saugatuck, the township, or Douglas, but I've been coming out here since the 70s, visiting. Like the area so much, I moved to Muskegon last summer. So I'm involved in the area, enjoy it, and become aware of some of what's going on here. So, my thoughts on, I've read through the master plan on a couple of occasions. It's a good plan. My thought is to truly take it to heart, do what you're gathered here tonight for, and follow it. Where I've seen a couple of problems in falling off from the guidance of the master plan is, it seems that a developer can submit an application for permitting. It's reviewed, they get a permit, but when that permit is violated, doesn't seem to be any repercussions. So I'm thinking in particular, I understand there's a residence that's been built in the North Shore development. I think I've seen it from the south side of the river mouth, but that it violates the township setback requirements from the river. And nothing's been done about that. Another way that the expression of the master plan doesn't get followed out is it's already caused some trouble now, I understand, is in the ordinances, the water access ordinance, section 4910H, I believe it is, that says no excavation to, you can't dig up the shoreline to create more shoreline to put docks in, is what it boils down to. It's pretty clear in that particular paragraph, but if you read some of the surrounding ordinance, it gets a little muddied. So if the ordinances are the execution, if they're the expression of the master plan, which I think is the idea, that in particular, I'd ask that you take a look at the language of that 4910H and do make sure that it's clear in what that's regulating, and certainly in any of the rest of them. I really appreciate that you're listening to my comments since I'm not a resident here. Appreciate you taking them into consideration. It's a great community. It's a good plan. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Griffin?
I don't see any other hands raised, but let me go through and see who else we have. Do Andrew or Joe Malakis, are either of you looking to comment? We have a Miss Betsy York. Miss York, are you looking to comment? And
No, I'm not.
Okay, thank you. David Swan, are you looking to make a comment at this time?
No, thanks, but thank you.
Yep, thanks, David. We have Kevin Shippa. Mr. Shippa, are you looking to comment at this time? Okay, other than that, Cindy, if you're comfortable, I don't see anyone else identifying themselves to comment.
Okay, good. Then we'll move on. Purpose of this meeting is really for a high-level review of the board and to get reacquainted with what the board goals and objectives are and with what the planning commission goals and objectives are. And in that case, I'm going to rely on Mr. Helmrich to talk about what the township board goals and objectives are, and let your chairperson, Rebecca Israels, talk about what the goals and objectives and advances that the planning commission is making. So if we could start with John, you have the floor.
Yeah, except I think we skipped 5, 6, and 7.
Oh.
I was queued up to be 8A, so.
Okay.
With all due respect.
Are there any changes proposed to the agenda? Is there a motion?
I would move that we accept the agenda as written. This is Bill Rowe.
Do we have support? But that was Welk.
Yes.
Then I will call the roll. And you don't have to tell me your location this time.
Let's change.
Rowe,
Yes.
Welk,
Yes.
Shipley,
Yes.
Osmond, yes. Marcy,
Yes.
Israels,
Yes.
Eiley,
Yes.
Helmrich,
Yes.
Franco,
Yes.
Bigford,
Yes.
Aldrich. Aldrich. I don't see her.
She's muted.
I can't, yes, sorry.
Okay,
Oh,
motion carries unanimously. So we can move on to opening remarks. And that's kind of what I was doing. Just saying that what the purpose of the meeting is to review the goals and objectives. It's not a meeting to pick a single project or issue to complain about or to nitpick to death, but rather to keep it rather high level. And that takes us straight to Lene, who's going to do some introductions.
Okay, just Becky, did you have anything to add on those opening remarks?
The only thing that I would add is that I would like to say thank you to Griffin and you for putting together our books, you know, with all the information in it a while ago, and it's been very helpful. So I'm glad that everyone's looking at it. And I really like it that other people from outside of the community is noticing it. So good job. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, I volunteered to just have a bit of an icebreaker because I know that for some of us, this might be one of the few times that we've been able to interact with our board members or with our planning commissioners. I also recognize that this is a public meeting and we are starting a little bit late, but I do have one of my favorite things. It's called Chit Chat. I don't know if you can see this. But it's essentially like table topics, and we don't need a 5-minute answer, even a 3-minute answer, even maybe just like a 30-second clip. And I have a couple of really interesting questions. So I thought I would just randomly pick a card for each person, and I'll just go through the roll, but I'm gonna do it in reverse. So I am gonna start with Ed Welk. So Ed, your question is, what was your first job?
Working in a gas station.
All right. All right, Shipley, Diane, your question is, if you could only read one magazine, which one would you subscribe to?
New Scientist.
Interesting. All right. So these are things that you can maybe follow up with your with one another later. All right. The next one is Bill Rowe. Bill, what are you looking forward to in the next 12 months?
Building a new house in Sedona, Arizona.
Nice, Bill.
Awesome.
All right, Cindy. Cindy, do you have a favorite quote and what would it be?
I don't know that I have a favorite quote, except yesterday I heard all day long, I have a dream.
Nice.
So
Nice. Fresh on the mind.
fresh on the mind.
All right, Brenda, Marcy. Brenda, if you were a doctor, which specialty would you choose?
I would choose rheumatology,
Oh,
just because I have seen several over the years, and they're just very compassionate, and they have to solve a lot of mysteries. So that's what I would pick.
yeah. I've also heard there's a shortage of them. So
Yes.
Okay, Becky. Becky, if you, Becky, would you rather sing, paint, write, or sew?
Oh, I would sew. I sew all the time.
Really?
I do. I'm a quilter.
Oh, wow.
I have a great big 14-foot quilting machine, and so I love to sew.
Nice. Dave Eiley. Dave, if you could spend 1 year in any country, which one would you choose?
1 year in any country. Actually, it's easy for me because I would go to Argentina.
Oh.
We were actually set to go there before, and I'd spend a lot of time in Patagonia and just hike and enjoy wildlife and nature, and that'd be my go-to spot.
Great. Well, I hope you get there real soon. John Helmrich. Okay, John. What do you think animals know that we don't?
Wow. Animals know that we don't.
To survive.
I think it's probably more of a fundamental awareness of climate and upcoming changes in such.
Okay.
I'll ask my 2 cats if they can help me.
Yep. Yeah, right. Daniel, what chore would you love to never do again?
Laundry.
Oh, just unlimited clothes. All right. Abby, what's the best meal your mom cooks?
It is beef stew with these really delicious dumplings. I don't know. I've never made beef stew with dumplings, but she does, and it's good.
Yum. Sounds good on a day like today. And then Stacy. Stacy, what's your favorite candy?
Oh, licorice, hands down.
Red or black?
Pardon me?
Red or black?
Oh, black.
Oh, black. All right.
Yep.
All right. And then just because Griffin, I'm going to do Griffin and Joe because we're here and I've got one for myself. So this is for Joe. Joe.
Lene, before we jump to Joe, if I can interrupt you real quick, I'd just like to introduce Joe Fry to everyone on the call.
Good idea.
I know township board members, many of you have had a chance to interact with Joe, but for our planning commission members, Joe Fry was hired at last week's township board member to serve as the interim township manager. I know, speaking for me, and I know I've heard it from many of the board members, we're very, very excited to have him joining the team. So without sharing too much more, before we get there, Joe, is there anything you'd like to say to everyone? I know it's kind of your first day, and I hate to put you on the spot, but for everyone, we're just really excited to have Joe join the group.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here. I was going over your agenda tonight, and I just noted that in the memo that it mentions strong towns quite a bit, and I think that's quite nice to hear. I really like strong towns, so that was kind of nice. And so I'm excited to be here with you all, and this is the best icebreaker via Zoom I've ever been a part of.
All right. All right, here's your question, Joe, and welcome. If you were given a free Super Bowl ad, what would you advertise?
I don't know. I feel like, what would I advertise? Probably something to do with Central Michigan University, because I love my alma mater. Or we would have to go with some sort of Budweiser commercial, because I love their Clydesdale puppy moments.
Nice. All right. Griffin? What one modern convenience could you live without?
That's a good question.
That's a tough one.
Modern convenience. I don't know if this counts, but I'm going to say video games. I've never been a video game or computer person, and I know a lot of people in my kind of age bracket are, but I could go without.
All right. All right. Mine is your glass half full or half empty? And I have to say, it really depends on the day. But to be honest, I do get into the negative at times. But I do try to pull myself out of it and always find something to be grateful for. But it's hard. It's hard. All right. That's what I have for icebreakers, my friends. Thank you.
That was a good one.
I hope you had fun.
That was cute, Lene.
Let's do another round.
Let's keep doing that. That was good.
That was fun.
Maybe we could
know more about these people.
Maybe we could do it with our questions as we go through our presentations. As I mentioned when I jumped ahead before, and I don't know why I did, but we'll be talking about the master plan review and discussions, and we're going to try to keep it quite high level, not complaining about a single project or a specific topic, but just where are we in setting our goals and objectives, and where is our planning commission chairperson taking us in the planning commission goals and objectives. So I'm going to give the floor to John and let him start with the township board goals.
Great, thank you. And first, I just wanted to mention so that everyone participating tonight realizes this joint meeting has been probably about a year in the planning. The township's a member of the Michigan Association of Planning, and they strongly urge that all township boards and planning commissions do a joint meeting like this annually to look at the master plan and see how it's being adhered to and if it may need some changes. I'm not aware of the last time that ever happened, and we've been dedicated to doing this, so it's exciting that we're doing that tonight. It also coincides with the fact that our master plan, the current one, which was adopted in 2016, needs to be, according to the Zoning Enabling Act, needs to be revised every 5 years. And that date will kick off in April of this year. And we're also recommended to not go through that process until the census results come out, which, as you know, have been delayed this year. So that's all kind of part and parcel of what we're doing here. And I have been asked to just go through some of the township board process. This again is something new that this board adopted. We started in December of 2019, having a session working with a facilitator that kind of honed down our primary goals for 2020. And we're going to look at those so I can just share them with everyone and point out ones that I feel are of particular relevancy to the Planning Commission. Do you have that one, Griffin? The priority list, or you're muted?
Yes, I do. Give me 1 second.
That's okay. I also want to point out while Griffin's looking for that, Griffin has really been the steward of this process and keeping it all in our minds and tracking and really detailed work throughout the year. But if you look at the screen right now, these were the top 16 priorities for 2020 that came out of our session in December of 2019. I'm not going to read through all of them right now, but there's 16 of them, and 8, I believe, have particular relevance to the Planning Commission. They include reviewing connection fees and REU schedules, the Blue Star Trail, Kalamazoo Lake Harbor Authority, hosting a tri-community meeting, reviewing the tri-community master plan, evaluating the township's position on the North Shore of Saugatuck development, establishing a wellhead protection ordinance, and Lakeshore Drive short and long-term planning. At our board meeting last week, Griffin put together an amazing 2020 annual report to kind of show us all how we have tracked on those 16. Again, here's just an example of the kind of the mastery that he's applied to this process with this chart with green, red, and yellow. Green is good, that means progress. Yellow might mean something's on hold. Red could mean things were paused, and that's really helped us stick to the plan. If we look quickly at the next section.
Which one are you looking for next,
Yeah.
John?
Let's just quickly go through the goal number 1, the slides for each one.
Absolutely.
And again, I'm not going to belabor these, but goal 1 was reformatting the budget. That was completed. Goal 2 was millage planning. That's ongoing because we do have a millage up next, this year, I should say, relative to the cemetery. Next was our general fund and operating budget planning, which of course is ongoing, but it's also been greatly improved and strengthened in the last year. Goal 4, again, I mentioned this, reviewing connection fees and REU schedule. That's ongoing, but it's moved forward considerably during the last year. Goal 5, reducing our pension liability. We had a very, very low unfavorable percentage of our pension liability covered in actual expenditure, and that has increased significantly in the last year and will also continue to increase this year. All right, goal 7, Blue Star Trail. We all know that's very much ongoing. It was put on hold a lot because of COVID, but the Tri-Community Blue Star Plan, the committee met again recently, and that is kicking up again. Goal number 7 was the whole issue of having the township as a member of the Kalamazoo Lake Harbor Authority. Actually, at the board meeting last week, we voted to accept a revised interlocal agreement and terms to join. The 2 cities had voted previously to have us join. So now the revised legal documents are back in their 2 hands for their vote before we formally join the Harbor Authority, which again speaks to this board's total dedication to improving tri-community relations and tri-community activities. Number 8 is the ambulance service, which again is completed. We changed contracts for half of the township that are now being better served than they were in the past in terms of response times. Number 9, this was a major goal to have a tri-community meeting of the 2 city councils and the board, similar to this. We extended invitations to the 2 cities in January and February of 2019. And then of course the lockdown came, and we've all kind of felt that would not be best served by Zoom, especially for public participation. So it remains on our list. Goal number 10 is just upgrading of the facilities. This speaks to the actual township hall, equipment, and everything about it. That's been ongoing and should maybe kick into a higher gear this year. Goal number 11, we're doing right now. This was reviewing tri-community master plan. So well done. And let's keep going now in the joint effort. Goal number 12, rebidding professional services and contracts. And this was primarily, no, we had never taken stock of who are all of our independent contractors. Who do we have deals with? Are they handshakes? Are they contracts? When are they up? Should they be reviewed? That's all been codified, and we know exactly everything from the person that does the office cleaning to who our legal counsel is. Next, administrative policy handbook. Again, this did not exist previously. Again, under Griffin's command and leadership, we have these policies are all in place, including financial policies and the like. Moving on, next was to evaluate our position on the North Shore of Saugatuck development. A lot of time has been spent on this. We twice this year filed comments as we were invited to with the Army Corps of Engineers. Again, something previous boards had chosen not to participate in. That's just one example. Next is establishing a wellhead protection ordinance. Again, this is very much in the works right now, as the Planning Commission knows better than anyone. And I'm sure it'll be on our Planning Commission agenda for the January meeting. And finally, number 16, this is Lakeshore Drive short and long-term planning relative to do with the erosion issues, sinkholes, etc. A lot happened on this front this year in terms of cooperation and interaction with the two cities and the Allegan County Road Commission, and this will be continuing into the future. So I wanted to do the 2020 update in terms of our goals and strategy for 2021. We did start the process in early January with a new facilitator and had a really robust meeting on Zoom, which was a little bit different, a little more quite challenging to discuss these kind of issues with our colleagues not being in the same room. The facilitator has come back with a summary, a strategic action plan, which was shared at the board meeting last week. However, the board voted, rather than go through it at that time and vote to adopt it, we felt with things going on right now that we're addressing with the transition to the manager position, we voted to hold a separate planning strategic action plan goals meeting in February. It'll be on Zoom. It'll be open to the public. We've set the date. I believe it's Saturday, February 20th at 10 a.m. Public is encouraged and invited to join us. At that meeting, we will be voting to set the strategic goals, priorities for 2021. And once that's done, I'll share with the Planning Commission probably at the February meeting. So that's the process. It's a lot of work, but it's certainly work we all love doing and want us to continue doing. So I don't know if you have any questions on the process or not. If so, I'll entertain them.
Are there any questions for Mr. Helmrich? I'm not seeing anybody trying to get my attention. So last chance. Okay, we'll move on to Becky Israels, who's going to give us a little update on what the Planning Commission is doing. And she has the help of Lene. So Becky, have at it.
Okay. You can hear me. I'll just talk to you a little bit. Do we want to talk about your memo first, Lene, or do we not even need to go into that?
I wasn't planning on going into that in detail.
Okay, that's
Becky,
fine.
because I know everybody's had a chance to look at it.
Sure, and it's a summary kind of the master plan and things that we could take on to accomplish as a committee.
Right.
Okay, so I'll just briefly tell you that it's a very ambitious plan, and and we're trying to support it, and decided to pick a few things to do versus saying do it all. Hello.
I don't know if that's me or.
It's you.
Oh, shoot. Oh, it's not. It's not me. Sorry, but I turned my phone off just in case. That might have been coming through my computer. I apologize. So anyway, I'll make this kind of brief too. And we went through the master plan and looked at a lot of the strategies that we could take on, and then started a process where we asked people what they were actually interested in working on outside of being in the planning commission meetings. And people responded with their interests, and it was very, very interesting. So we kind of I narrowed it down to 4 areas initially. And one of those is already operating, and that's a waste management and recycle committee, of which Daniel is already on. And so he is going to represent that committee to the planning commission too in the work that they're doing. The other 3 areas that we looked at and that seemed to rise up in importance from everyone's list were the Blue Star Corridor, the rural character of the township, and then housing and residential availabilities and options. And so that has a bit to do with agriculture too, as that land development has changed and may change further into residential. And so that's kind of what that's looking at. After I put together this report, I did add 2 other things that seem to be important to us over the last few meetings. And one of them was to read the book and discuss it, the Strongtown book. And another one that came up that I thought maybe I could kind of push farther was to operationalize a tri-community quarterly PC meeting. So just to give you a little bit of the leadership of these committees, Dave Eiley is going to head the Blue Star Corridor group. And we want you to know that anybody's welcome to be on these committees. Of course, we can't have more than 3 people from planning on the committees, but I'm saying people from the township, from the tri-community and elsewhere. I mean, we like experts too. And Daniel has taken on the committee of rural character of the township. And so he'll be leading that, and he has some great suggestions of people that he would like to have on that committee with him. And I initially asked Bill Rowe if he would lead housing because he's been on our board for so long. And so he probably has a great deal of wisdom. And Bill said he would remain on the committee, but he didn't really want to accept the leadership of it. And Ed said that he will start to pull it together. And so actually Ed, Bill, and Dave Eiley, the 3 of them have a really good background, and I think they'll do really well on getting that started. And I'm not on any of these committees, so I was feeling lonely. So I added the Strongtown book review, and I think that we will read that. And I sort of divided it up into chapters, and I'll just have some brief 2 questions that we can answer at our meetings and maybe do a 10-minute review of it, but we'll probably read 3 chapters at a time. And if you don't remember, this is the book, Strongtowns. And Lene's talked about it frequently too. And then operationally, a tri-community quarterly PC meeting is something that really doesn't happen. And it is in, you know, our goals. It is in the master plan. And so I think that I will, I'll try to pull that together. And I think that, you know, initially, I think we'll learn a lot, and I think it will be a good thing down the road. I've asked each committee to set priorities and goals and a strategy to accomplish their goals. And a simple way to look at that would just be to identify the desired goal. And they don't have to take on the whole Blue Star Highway, but identify a desired goal, strategize responsibilities and steps to get there, and be accountable to your team and to the township board and to the planning commission, and just evaluate and reevaluate what you're doing and enjoy your accomplishments as you do it. Everyone that's on the planning commission is a part of one of these committees too. So we look forward to guidance and support also from the board. And if you have any questions about that, please direct them to me.
Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
Lene, did you want to just go briefly over your memorandum?
You know, it's pretty extensive, and I guess I can just provide the overview that this was one of the goals of the township board. So as the zoning administrator, I reviewed the master plan with the lens of what really the lens of zoning as one of the implementation tools, the planning and zoning process, I guess, the entitlement process, since that's the realm that this department works in. We review all the site plans for any commercial and industrial development, also any planned unit development. So when it comes to master plan items, we look at the impact that development is having on the township vision. And then we really rely on what our zoning ordinance has to implement that master plan. So that's the lens that memorandum, that was the focus of that memorandum. And I guess I would just want to speak into master plans in general. And the way that we often talk about a master plan is it's that umbrella document, it's a policy guide. But, and even as one of our members of the public said, it's really the ordinances that give it the teeth. And, you know, the sequence is typically a master plan is either created or updated, and then the zoning ordinance is amended or implemented to memorialize and operationalize the vision of that plan. And I know that under the leadership of Joe Malakis and previous planning commissions and Ed and Bill and Dave, you've been on and Becky too, you've been on the planning commission a long time. And when the master plan was initially developed, there was a whole host of amendments that were done to implement that plan. And so this memorandum, I think, introduces some areas where we can do more, where we can take on some more of those changes to implement the plan. And I think that that could be one of those focus areas of these committees, is as you're talking through these broad, when you're having these broad conversations, be thinking about what in the ordinance is tied to that vision, and how could we create you know, rules and regulations or procedures in our ordinance that that implement the vision. So, and we've done a lot of learning, right? A lot of us here have inherited decisions of the past, and we're doing the best that we can to abide by those decisions because they were decisions, and we have to carry those out, right? But we're learning, and I think we can put in place new tools for the next group of people that have to implement this plan, right? Ourselves and the future. So instead of spending a lot of time on revisiting the past, I really think that let's learn from the past and find ways that we can put tools in our ordinance that teach us and set up the next generation for success.
Thank you, Lene. That was great. I think our next thing is enforcement challenges, and I'm not sure who was going to address that, if it was either Mr. Graham or Ms. Wells.
I can talk a little bit about that, and I have some notes here, but so part of the role of the zoning administrator and the township manager is enforcement. And that is prescribed in our zoning ordinance and also our general law ordinance in the township. And the way that we've characterized enforcement over the last year and a half that I've been at the township is we sort of have two buckets. And you'll recall we talked about enforcement at the township board meeting last May. And those two buckets that we talked about, one is property maintenance. And that's kind of our complaints that we get related to, grass that hasn't been mowed, vegetation that's growing, trash, inoperable vehicles, buildings that are deteriorating or haven't been built according to standards. So we're seeing a lot of those types of complaints in our community, and we respond to them regularly. And the way that we respond is we visit the site, we take photographs, then we enter the complaint into our software and tracking program, and we upload those photos. Then we send a letter to that property owner, usually a certified letter, to verify that it's been received. And the first warning, we really try to work it out in a way that is best for both parties, right? We really try to avoid litigation. We try to avoid civil infractions. We really try to work with that person or property owner. So just all those steps that I've described, I mean, that's easily 4 hours of time for one case, right? Because of all of the documentation. So, and we're seeing more property maintenance complaints as people are working from home. During COVID, there was a real uptick in complaints because I think people maybe have more time on their hands and they're noticing more in the community. There's probably a whole myriad of factors, but that is our property maintenance. And when they do get to the point of ticketing and litigation, we bring in the township attorney, and then we have a greater expense. And the ticket that we write, the first fine is $100, and then it's $250. And so, it's unlikely that we ever recoup the cost, the staff cost that goes into that. But that's what it is, right? That's how it goes. Our second level of enforcement, I think, is under the bucket that we would call development management. And development management is all of the follow-up that our department does when we approve any type of development at the Planning Commission. There's often a whole list of conditions that the Planning Commission puts on that application that and that other reviewing bodies put on that application, being the fire district and the township engineer. Now, I'm not the one verifying that those conditions are met. The fire chief and his team do that, and Dana Bird from Prine and Newhoff does that. But I still oversee and coordinate all of that. Before any building permit is issued, we have to make sure that all of those entities are satisfied with the plan that has likely been revised since the Planning Commission saw it. So that's one level of check and balance before a building permit's issued. After the building is built, there is a certificate of occupancy that our building inspector issues. And we repeat the process essentially. We go to the site, we count the trees, we look at the light fixture, we count parking spaces. That's kind of what planning does. The engineer looks at the drainage basin, the utilities. The fire district looks at all of their hookups and signage and addressing and the turnaround and the width of the drive. And then the building inspectors do their work inside of the building. So there's a whole level of review that happens just for that type of new development before that owner is able to occupy the building. So that requires a level of coordination and enforcement, so to speak. And then the third level of that development management is any kind of special approval use, where you have an ongoing use happening and there's no certificate of occupancy and there's no building permit that's issued. Likely, it's usually an existing building. It's not always, but or it's a use on the land, right? Like some of the uses with mining and other just straight up land uses that don't have buildings. So that requires ongoing review and coordination and kind of management and oversight. So with all of those things, I think we have to remember that this zoning department is in person, just half a day per week. And we're also overseeing the Planning Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, special projects like this. So there's a lot to do and a lot of oversight and coordination, but I think what I want to leave you with is that we're really getting better at our systems and the ways that we communicate as a team. And I'm really hopeful for all of us working together moving forward. Just in the past few months, we have just new processes, internal processes with communicating with our building inspector, with the fire district, with engineering. So from a development management standpoint, I think we're learning a lot and doing better. I think in terms of some of the uses on the land, that this Planning Commission has learned a lot, and even this township board. And I think that these committees can consider how do we strengthen our ordinances, specifically with some of the lessons learned around just verifying site conditions. Verifying site conditions, maybe requiring as-built drawings, things like that, that I think we could maybe look at memorializing in our zoning ordinance so that, again, future generations, future staff, future commissions have those kind of triggers in place to ensure that we're living up to the vision of that plan. So those are some of the challenges, I guess. Time, money, and are the big ones. But we're doing all that we can with what we have.
The only thing I would add to that would be I know Lene and I over the last year and a half have had individual conversations with all of you about some of these challenges, staff face on a regular basis when it comes to both buckets of enforcement. And I think we just are really appreciative of the opportunity at this meeting to bring that up again and just to give a friendly reminder to you all who really are the decision makers in our community that from our perspective, capacity needs to be taken into account when decisions are made. It's not more important than or less important than any of the other factors I know you all consider on a regular basis with the various policy questions that go before you all. But when it comes to enforcement, as Lene mentioned, it's probably the hardest and most time-consuming thing we all do, on top of all of the other day-to-day items that staff does to run and manage the township on a day-to-day basis. I think we just want to bring it to all of your attention that besides the fact that we are learning and we are getting better and we are putting processes in place with the idea of they will make us more successful moving forward, we want to be as candid and blunt with all of you as well that we recognize that enforcement is one of those areas that the township needed to improve on, is continuing to improve on, and will continue to improve on. But for the sake of not being repetitive and giving you all a chance to discuss when we get to the open board discussion section of the meeting, I don't think Lene and I can emphasize enough how capacity, staff time capacity, financial resource capacity, and other types of capacity, they bluntly limit what we are able to do on a day-to-day basis. The last type of capacity I'll share is just when you all are considering ordinances, amending ordinances, adopting ordinances, how ordinances are written, how regulations are set up, are they enforceable is a real question to think about. I know over the last year with various items at different levels of government, enforceability, the idea and question of enforceability has been raised. And I think that is just something that we would also ask that you all continue to consider with all of the other myriad of factors that you all think about when various items are put before you all. So with that, Lene, unless you have anything else to add, Cindy, I'm happy to hand it over, back over to you. And again, we really appreciate the chance to kind of share some of the challenges we've been facing.
Thank you, Lene and Griffin. You've done a great job explaining that. I probably get it more than some people, but so let's move on to open board discussion. I think it would be best if you didn't speak until you were recognized. It's very difficult when people interrupt or talk over someone, and I really need to make sure that everybody has a chance to talk. But is there any one particular person who wants to kick off an open board discussion? I'm not hearing anybody offer to start the discussion. So let's just...
I'll start it, Cindy.
Thank you, Mr. Welk. You have the floor.
I guess my major question would be, why do we not have the staff that's necessary to do all the work that is needed to be done? I can't believe that we're in such financial straits that the township board cannot afford to hire several people or bring Lene on for 5 days a week or whatever. It's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
There is a limited amount of money that the township gets to keep for its operating expenses out of all the taxes that it collects. When you write your tax bill check for $6,000, don't think the township gets to keep that $6,000. Most of that is distributed out to the school districts, the library, the interurban, the ISD. So may look on the face like we're taking in a lot of money, but the township doesn't get to keep all of it. And it's been a very limited amount. Griffin, do you know off the top of your head what approximate percentage that would be? Like,
the best way I can explain it is there's some factors. Are we getting feedback? I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize. There's a various factors that influence the percentage. Is your property PRE'd, so on and so forth. But in most instances, you're paying your tax bill, 1 to 2% of that is what goes to the township general fund for general operating expenses.
so does that answer at least part of your question, Ed?
Yes, it does.
And I would, okay.
I'd like to comment on Ed's thought because, I agree with him. And I think he said dire straits or something. I just want to remind everyone, we just had our annual audit. Financially, we are in excellent shape, perhaps the best the township's been in a while. We have over 100, I think it's 120% of our annual operating expense, in the bank, in our general fund bank account. So it becomes an issue and a challenge for the board to address in the budgeting process, and also obviously taking into effect, what is our millage rate, as has been commented on. But I think it's a really good point that needs to be addressed very strongly when we start the budget planning for the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1st. And because I think the actions we're trying to take, I want to thank all that Lene and Griffin have done in the last year improving our enforcement, but then it gets to a point where, what else can be done? How do we deal with violations? This board inherited a couple major situations, ongoing projects, where some think that the master plan was ignored or not adhered to. And in other cases where there seems to be known violation of plans that had been approved and conditions. And it's a real conundrum and challenge because it could take 2 or 3 people on a full-time basis to really do this right. And we're just not in that position yet, but I think we need to address it more and more.
Okay, Brenda, you had some comments. You have the floor.
Yes. Relative to this discussion, only a certain amount of what we get can be used for operations, but I don't want to give you any wrong statistics. I'm going to ask Griffin if you can tell us where we place in the state in terms of millage and, the expenses that we can use for, the monies that we are allotted for administrative expenses.
Thanks, Brenda. I can do the best I can. I think, again, anytime you're talking about a local government's finances, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of things that go into that. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to do the best I can, but I just do need to put that disclaimer out there that it is a much more complicated conversation that we can probably get into right now. I will say I'm happy to break down the township budget with any of you individually. I'm a nerd for that stuff, but for the sake of this conversation, Brenda, what I think you're looking for is, this fiscal year, the township's general operating millage, so that's the tax millage that funds the township's general fund, is 0.4090, which I can confidently say is the lowest in Allegan County. I can't speak with any level of confidence regarding the rest of the state, except in my experience, I would say that's quite low. I do think it's also worth noting, though, that taxes are always based on 2 things. They're based on a rate and a base. So your tax rate is your millage rate, and your tax base is the value of the property in the township. One of the challenges Saugatuck Township finds it in with a lower rate is because Saugatuck Township, for a small township, we have quite high property values. We tend to have relatively a higher tax base. For example, about $500,000 in Saugatuck Township generates about $150,000 in tax revenue. But to go back to your question, and again, I'm happy to go into it in more or less detail. I think one of the things that we often point out that's shocking to some people is this budget year, the township's general fund is budgeted to bring in approximately $770 in the general fund. Excuse me, $770,000 into the general fund. Less than $150,000 of that will come from property taxes. A large chunk of that comes from state revenue sharing. Another large chunk of that comes from a tax administrative fee, which the township collects via our capacity of collecting taxes and then distributing those taxes onto other entities. Like I know John and Cindy and some of the others mentioned, to the schools, the ISD, the county, the interurban, the library, and so on and so forth. And then a large chunk of the township's general fund revenue comes from permits and fees. And that is a conversation I know I've shared with the township board before, which can be quite dangerous because permits and fees are a less stable source of revenue, and they tend to have greater fluctuation than state revenue sharing or tax revenue. So there's a lot of things to consider when you look at the township's finances and particularly general fund, general operating finances. But all I would really say at this point is, even going back to the township board's goals that that John really eloquently spoke about earlier in the meeting, reviewing our general fund and our general operating expenses has been a goal of the township board, at least in my understanding, and it's something that I believe they're going to continue to review. I would say if there are other comments or thoughts, my understanding is the township board's always very willing to hear those. The other thing I would just say at this point is, again, if there's more information about the budget you'd like to go into, I'm happy to sit down with you, one-on-one, and we can go through the pages of it if you'd like. But otherwise, I'll probably stop there for now.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. That was a very good explanation.
Thank you.
It reminds me of the survey that the townships distributed once about the parks. And it said, what kind of services would you like for your parks? But it didn't really say, and this is how much it will cost. So sometimes when you have a big goal or a big plan, you have to think about, okay, the taxpayers want X, Y, and Z, but are they willing to pay for it is the question. So that's something we have to keep in mind about that. Is there anybody else that would like to talk about enforcement?
Cindy, I just wanted to add that we are aware of our the staff is being stretched, and I think one of our board goals that we're going to learn at our strategic meeting is that we do need an administrative assistant, and I'm hopefully we'll be able to fill that need soon because it's needed, that's for sure. So that would help a little bit with our problem, I hope.
Yeah, I think you're right, Stacy. Who wanted to speak?
This is Bigford.
Hi, Abby, you have the floor.
So, while on paper, it does look like we're cash rich, but can't spend that all on operational costs, as we just learned. And, there's just huge unforeseen expenses. It could be litigation. It could be, a big reduction in revenue. But it does sound like through this discussion that there's some real interest in code enforcement and upping our game there and in aligning our ordinances with our master plan. So I guess I would like to get just some advice from Griffin and from Lene of how can we do that just judiciously and conservatively? What would be a conservative approach that we're not just like hiring somebody, you know, for $150,000 a year to fill a position to do that? What would be a conservative first step?
Well, my first suggestion would be the township board would need to give some direction in regard to what kind of service they're looking to get. I think we've talked kind of a couple different things so far today. One would be day-to-day administrative support in the office. I think that can be done relatively easily. Staff could prepare a job description. It could be brought before the township board. Township board could approve it. You could post it. You could hire a part or a full-time administrative assistant. They could help in the office with, again, a myriad of the day-to-day tasks that we face. I think more specifically, you could then get into the conversation about, we currently have Lene, who is a part-time consulting zoning administrator for us. Is there need or a desire to have a full-time zoning administrator or a zoning administrator who works more hours than we currently have? You could also get as specific to go into a code enforcement officer or a code enforcement official, like I think you started to mention. In my experience, a lot of smaller communities, they tend to have part-time code enforcement officials. A lot of times they tend to be retired corrections officers, retired sheriff's deputies, police officers, folks who are more comfortable having some what can be difficult conversations and documenting and following up with various things. But there are also organizations that contract out some of those enforcement things. So my suggestion would be, the first thing is the township board would have to really give staff direction that they want to increase the staff capacity, have a conversation about how that's going to be funded. That really happens in one of two ways. Either you increase your revenue, more than likely through increasing taxes, or if you're going to keep your revenue the same, you have to decide what other services or what else you're going to cut. After that, it's, okay, where do you want that money to go? And that's what I said. There's kind of clarifying what direction that staff is going to work in. You could also ask your staff for recommendations in regard to that. That's probably the best way I can answer this right now. Is it would require some more conversations, but funding's a piece of it. How are you going to pay for it? Abby, I think you made a great comment when you talked about operational costs. So those are going to be annual, ongoing costs that happen every year. You're going to want that to match the annual revenue. So tax dollars or state revenue sharing that you can expect every single year, which is different than what I would ever recommend you use your reserves, your fund balances on, which, again, it can be appropriate to spend down fund balances. That is something at the level of reserves the township has now could be a smart decision. But I would always suggest when you spend down fund balance, you're talking about more your large capital expenses. So things like investing in infrastructure, investing in your facilities, paying down debt, paying down liabilities such as pension or OPEB. So there is a little bit of a difference there. But again, going full circle all the way back to what your original question and what you said is, I think from a staff perspective, we have started to have a lot of these discussions over the last year at various levels. The next step is staff's going to need some direction from the township board and from other leaders in the township about, is that the direction you want to go in? If it is the direction, staff's going to be able to help you get there. We can give you recommendations. We can bring you suggestions. We can, again, do the legwork, which is what we do. But I think the big picture kind of policy decision pieces, staff more than likely would want some more concrete direction from you all as the township board. I hope that's helpful. If it's not, I'm happy to answer anything else I can.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to participate in the open board discussions? I want to make sure everybody has a chance. So John, you have the floor.
And I just want to say, that last section was really good and important and pertinent as we start our budget process. And I think I'm hearing very clearly some of the needs, especially on the enforcement side of things, which we've talked about. I wanted to steer us back a little bit more towards how I prepared for this meeting, which was to reread the master plan again. I took a lot of notes, and I'm not going to read all my notes, but some of the thoughts that struck me in rereading it, there were 12 main ones, and I'm only going to mention 4. I just want to get them out there, have them shared between my colleagues on the Planning Commission and on the board and with the public for continued and future discussion and hopeful action. This one is sort of redundant. It's been mentioned by Chairman Israels in a way, but it's time to reestablish the Tri-Community Joint Planning Committee, which is the group that works on any revisions or adaptations to the master plan. We had one of these that disbanded in 2016 when the current plan was adopted, but that's the next step in the process to reach out and put this Tri-Community Committee together as we move through 2021 and the review of the plan. One thing that struck me in the plan that I'm not sure we've spent enough attention, given enough attention to, it mentions special environments and open space and having sub-area plans for Oxbow, for the quote Denison property, as it was known then. It's now the Padnos property or North Shore. Again, I think that's something that would be really critical and important for us to address. On a related note, it states very clearly in the current plan that priority recommendations to the 3 communities include public acquisition of said Denison property on both sides of the river and review of ordinances to be consistent with master plan. And again, this is not a resolved issue, and I think we need to move forward as aggressively as we can on that subject. Another sub-area plan that's recommended is for Blue Star Highway. Perhaps that'll grow out of this committee. The Blue Star Committee, I also want to just add, in my view, is also about general economic development in the township, which again has never been aggressively addressed by either of these bodies. And since I'll just wrap up here, we're talking a lot about ordinance review, and there are a couple that struck me as that should go to the top of the list as we consider these. One again is, we've talked a lot about this already, but the process to handle violations of plans, approved plans and conditions, and consider having as-built submitted, not map, but plan after something's done. Did they do it right? Show us what you actually did. And then considering having as-built as a actual ordinance, or maybe just have the planning commission add that as a condition more than it has in the past. And then I wanted to acknowledge and thank those members of the public that did speak about section 4910H. Again, that's the one that opens by saying, in no event shall a canal or channel be excavated for the purpose of increasing the water frontage. I think because this has kind of been ignored, we need to strengthen this ordinance. or clarify, add some language so that there is no way to misinterpret this. I think that's should be a big goal of ours. On a lesser front, I'll just bring it up because I've talked about it before. I'd like to see us in terms of the ordinances relative to household pets and horses. I'd like us to allow certain fowl, chickens in all residential areas in a limited fashion, as the city of Douglas has done, as the cities, Grand Rapids, Detroit, cities all over the state have done this. And I think it's kind of ludicrous that they're completely prohibited on certain streets based on their residential zoning in such an agricultural and rural township as ours. So, like I said, that's not quite as important to me right now, but I'd like to see us address it. So I hope we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there somebody else that would like to have the floor to talk in our open board discussion? Like I said, I want everybody to have a chance. So either raise your hand or I can call on you, and again, in alphabetical order.
This is Dave Eiley. I
Dave.
suppose I'd like to just bring up the fact that, I'm going to be chairing the committee for the Blue Star Highway. And I agree with John that it's beyond just, how the maybe traffic moves and, and whether we do roundabouts or the Blue Star, the bike path. And it also has to do with economic development and those things as well. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. I guess I just would like to, I feel like this is a pretty important issue in the township because it is the major corridor through the township. And from what I see, I mean, traffic is just increasing, which is great because we've got more people coming through into our community, which gives opportunities for businesses of all types. And I guess the only reason why I wanted the floor for this is because this is a new committee, and I'm going to be starting to put together at the request of Becky Israel's to put together an agenda of some things that we're going to try to attack. And I kind of like to throw it out there to see if anybody has any interest in joining on with this or has any comments regarding some things that maybe we should tackle that I haven't yet thought about. And I just like to put it out there since I'm able to, and I have everybody here right now.
Thank you, Dave. Is there anybody that would like to follow up on that comment?
Yeah, this is Shipley.
Hi, Denise, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, Dave, I would love to, whatever we need to work on. Every time I hear sirens, I immediately assume it's there's been an accident right out here on the Blue Star, somewhere between Spectators and the area where we live. So I think it's extremely important. So everybody comes in and out of town. It's just getting busier and busier. So whatever needs to be done, you let me know, and I'm happy to help with the cause.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Denise. It sounds like you just volunteered for Dave's subcommittee.
Absolutely. I'm happy to. I have one stipulation though. So after reading the master plan, it is extremely important to me that we visit the master plan every time we discuss the township. We talk about anything that's going on. This has taken a lot of work to put this together. I feel like we owe it to everyone that put it together. And I think we owe it to, gosh, just everybody to really take this serious. I have to wonder, after listening to Griffin and Lene, and I've been quickly made aware of how stressed and pressured they are and what an amazing job that they're both doing. I sense a lot of frustration. I sense they have walked into a black cloud But I want to know that the decisions that we're making are not based on the frustrations because we are not doing our part in helping them enough. I need to know that the decisions that we are making is based on our master plan and not based on the frustrations and their hands being tied in the township office. So I'm happy to help with any cause. Dave, anybody who puts a committee together, I'm happy. My stipulation is that we look back at the master plan when we do that, and that we continue to keep that into consideration. So with that, thank you.
Excellent, Denise. Thank you very much. I'm sure Dave looks forward to having you on the committee. And it sounds to me like you've maybe taken some training in citizen master planning, because that is exactly what they'll tell you in the training is all your decisions should be looked at through the master plan. So is there anybody else that would like to participate in the general board discussion?
Brenda, Marcy, yes.
You have the
First
floor.
of all, thank you. Dave, thank you very much. As you know, this has started and stopped many times, and you had a very good friend in an accident that kind of drove the beginning of this. So I'm so glad that this is moving forward. And then I wanted to thank everybody who does this, the community, like Lori Gosthorn is on here, the amount of time that she spends in parks and recreations, just all the people that volunteer, and they volunteer to help us. Dave, I don't know if you're going to have any, we have citizens on your committee, but I just want to say it's so important. And we are getting more and more applications for people to get on board with some of these commissions and committees. So I hope we have more of that. But Dave, I'm really happy this is moving forward. I was going to ask you about it, on the side at a time when I run into you at iLeaf. But so thank you, and thank everybody who volunteers. I think most of us have a good time when we do this. So, and it's worth your time. Thanks.
Thank you, Brenda. Any other board comments, open discussion items?
Brenda, you don't have to ask me on the side. I'll just tell you right now, I'd be happy to have you on the committee.
Anybody else? Stacy, do you have anything you want to add or comment on? No, is that a no?
That's a no.
Okay.
Or Dave will snatch me into the committee. No, I'd help you, Dave, if you need help, so.
Oh, we can't have three board members on it.
Oh, that's right. Oh, darn. No, it's a worthwhile committee, though.
Yeah.
I did not say yes, and so we can fit another.
Oh, okay.
But Dave,
All
I
right.
might volunteer my husband.
But-
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say that beyond this, if anybody has any recommendations of public, like just regular, just normal citizens in the township or whomever, we'd love any expertise we can possibly get in order to, to make this happen. So.
Thank you, guys. Anybody else? Abby, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I said my piece earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, going through the master plan, I was struck by the general interest of residents in preserving and improving water quality in the area. And when we had our hydrological engineer from Cal Lake come out to our planning commission meeting, we did learn that our delineated wellhead area, a large part of that does fall into Lake Township. And I don't think that they are I don't think they're currently part of the wellhead protection program. And they've yet to adopt a wellhead protection ordinance. And it might be a good time to initiate reaching out to them to see if they would be interested in doing so. Perhaps, someone could attend a board meeting, or we could correspond with them. I just think that, including them makes sense, especially because what people do and how people use land in Lake Township does directly affect the quality of water that people drink in the tri-community area. So that's something that, I would be interested in doing, and I think somewhat falls into the wheelhouse of the Rural Character Committee that Becky has asked me to chair. So that's one thought. My other thought, it's something that actually, I've noticed and I've enjoyed, but I never really appreciated the practical value of it. The master plan talks about how the heavily wooded buffer along the highway actually is a fantastic noise reduction. It reduces a lot of the noise that we experience in the residential areas that are surrounding, that are close to the highway, and even far from the highway. I know John Vanderbeek has expressed interest in and actually has met with property owners who have property that abut the highway, and has discussed establishing trail easements. And I think that not only just for recreation, is probably a huge interest is, to, what am I trying to say here? It's more than just recreation to preserve the heavily wooded areas that buffer the highway. If we really could keep down the noise permanently, I think that would, add so much to preserving the rural character of the community. So that's something else that kind of struck me that I would be interested in pursuing. So those are kind of two things. And one other thing, which might be somewhat controversial, there is a reference to waste hauling and recycling in the Tri-Community Master Plan. And it references how Douglas and Saugatuck have gone to single haulers. It also references how Saugatuck Township is in the Allegan County Resource and Recovery and Recycling Program. That's no longer true. We're no longer participating in that program. Now, if you want recycling services, it's purely voluntary. If you want them, you can sign up for them. But in general, they're fairly expensive. At the low end, they're about $16.50 a quarter. At the high end, they can be somewhere around $48 a quarter for residents in the township. And on average, residents in the township pay over $200 more a year for our waste and recycling services, the same services that people pay in Douglas and Saugatuck. So for recycling and waste hauling here, we're probably paying almost $250 more on average than a person in Saugatuck or in Douglas would be paying. As part of the Tri-Community Recycling Committee, we're exploring the various haulers that exist in the township. We're trying to identify local haulers that might be interested or have the capacity to bid as a single hauler. And we're in discussions with Saugatuck City and Douglas City about whether or not there's any interest in a bid as a tri-community. So those are some conversations that are going on in the Tri-Community Recycling Committee. And I do think it's worth revisiting, just because $250 a year in savings is quite substantial. And it also makes recycling, it gives equitable access to recycling to everybody in the community, because right now to pay, if you're quoted at $48 a quarter, that's almost $200 a year for recycling services. For a lot of people, it's just out of reach. So those are just kind of general observations that I wanted to add.
Thank you, Daniel. That was a good summary. Becky, do you have anything you want to add to the discussion at this time? Becky, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I really don't have anything else to add. I think the discussion's been very good. I would like us to remember when we're talking about possibly employment and adding hours and things, that there are many, many times when I am talking with Lene in the evening, and So her 4 hours a week, and Griffin too, how often do I talk to Griffin, and hours outside of normal office hours? And so I do really appreciate the extra time those people, both of those folks put in. And if we're looking at an administrative assistant, I'm also wondering, a volunteer coordinator might be something helpful in our community down the road too. And just to keep in the back burner, I know it's probably not what we want to do right now, but there are advantages to having someone in charge of volunteer activities, and that can sometimes take on some of the tasks that kind of create havoc with your job description. And then I was going to mention that revenue sharing is not something we can always count on. I mean, this year could be a big change in revenue sharing, so you never know, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Brenda, do you have anything you want to add now at this time?
No, I think I've shared enough. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rowe, we haven't heard a lot from you. Do you have anything you'd like to comment on at this time?
I would just maybe echo some of the comments on enforcement. In my 12 plus years on planning and zoning, that's been something that's been an issue for a long time. And I understand the budget constraints, but there's not a lot of point in putting forth requirements if we don't have the resources and personnel to follow through with it and make sure that those things happen. And it's clearly a budgetary issue. I mean, there just isn't the money to provide the resources and the people to do it. And I think we need to take a really close look at that, more on the board level, obviously, than the planning commission, about how that can be addressed. And I know there was some good discussion about it tonight, but I think it's something that that we really need to look into some more. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Bill. Ed, do you have any comments you'd like to add at this time?
No, not really. I mean, I'd certainly be happy to work with Griffin and finding money, but that's another issue.
Thank you. There are some options as we go into this budget year that we're going to look very hard at to see if we can't get some more revenue, but we'll see what happens. Denise, do you have anything you want to add? You're muted, Denise.
I apologize. Thank you. I also want to say thanks to Griffin and Lene. I'm hearing really amazing things. And while I said I understand they're frustrated, I understand why they're frustrated. So if we can help them somehow, whatever we need to do to help them, then they can help us. So thank you again to them.
Thanks, Denise. Did I miss anybody, or is there anyone who wants to add another comment now? I'm not seeing anybody, but my computer is very slow at this time. My internet is very poor, and most of your faces are frozen, so.
I think we're good.
Okay, so now we can move on to public comments, and we can open the public comment portion of the meeting. We'll see any raised hands or anybody there from the public that wants to make any comments or add any information or volunteer to be on a board. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Are you, Griffin?
Lori Goshorn has her hand raised, Cindy.
Lori, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to tell you how heartened I am to hear the myriad of topics that everyone is concerned with and interested in that are outlined in the master plan. I think you've got a really top-notch group of people in both boards, and I'm excited to see how you guys carry this forward. I also sent a message that that I might be able to offer some time and thoughts to Dave on the Blue Star committee, because not only from personal interest, but also I think we've got a couple of parks over there that I might be able to liaise with the Parks Commission and help out in that respect. So good job tonight, all.
Thank you, Lori. I'm sure Dave will get in touch if he's ready to have another person on the board, and it's important to connect with the parks and how they're laid out along the Blue Star. Is there anybody else with a raised hand? Griffin, do you see anyone?
I do not. We can go through the few others we've got and make sure everyone's had an opportunity. Miss Betsy York, were you looking to speak at this time or still just watching?
No, I'm just watching and learning. I'm impressed with your planning. I live in Douglas. I know several of you, and I just was watching and learning. I'm just really impressed with the process, and I'm working with John, and so I appreciated Mr. DeFranco's comments, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks for joining. We also have David Swan. Were you looking to speak at this point, or either of the Malakises? We've also got Ed Karasek on the line. Are any of you looking to speak? Kevin Shippa as well?
Not Griffin. This is Ed Karasek. I just appreciated all of the commentary and the perspectives, and getting a better sense of how the sausage is made in the township. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
This is Joe Malakis.
Hi, Joe, you have the floor.
Nice to see that you're back to having these joint meetings. I think they're productive. Sometimes more issues on the table than other times, but good to see you're going back to that as we used to do. I sat in. I guess I just had to get my planning commission fix in this year. So appreciate it, and good luck in the future on your work at Township. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Kevin? Last chance, Kevin.
Or anyone else that I may have missed? I know we got Rick Kirk. You're still on the line. If you'd like to speak again, that would be appropriate. Anyone else we may have missed? This is going to be the time. Not hearing anybody, Cindy.
Okay.
It's back to you.
All right. Then we'll close the public comment portion of the meeting and move on to our adjournment. Because we're doing Zoom meetings, and I think you all know that we do have to take a motion in a second and a roll call vote. Is there anybody that would like to make a motion?
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Motion by Mr. Welk. Is there support?
This
I'll
is Marcy.
second.
I'll support. Oh, either one of us.
I'll recognize Bill Rowe as having made the second for that adjournment. And if there's no discussion, I'll call the roll. Is there anybody that has a comment? Okay, once again, in alphabetical order. Aldrich.
Yes.
Bigford.
Yes.
DeFranco.
Yes.
Helmrich.
Yes.
Eiley.
Yes.
Israels.
Yes.
Marcy.
Yes.
Osman, yes. Rowe.
Yes.
Shipley.
Yes.
Welk.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. So thank you, everybody, for attending. This was kind of long, but not too bad. And I think you did a great job. You got a lot of issues out there, and there's a lot of stuff for us to talk about.
Thank you.
Thank you.